Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the Australian government's and the regional government's response to the shooting at Bondi Beach in Sydney. Now, Bondi Beach is an iconic beach in Sydney, Australia, and especially for European tourists, particularly for British tourists and New Zealand tourists, they flock there. It's like a rite of passage. You have to go to Bondi Beach, and given it's one of the most prominent beaches around one of the most densely populated areas of Sydney, with decent public transport links, the beach on a hot summer's day, it's pretty packed, and but even on a cold day, there's a lot of people walking on the beach and so on. So it's an iconic beach that everyone needs to go to. And if you talk to particularly tourists from, say, Britain, where do you want to go? I want to go to the Opera House, I want to go to Sydney Harbour Bridge, and I want to go to Bondi Beach. That they're the sort of the big three. I used to go there. I used to live around there as a young man, and late teens and so on, and went to the beach frequently. So anyway, there's we don't know yet what the final death toll is for the shooting at Bondi Beach. There are still people that are being in critical condition, and so the death toll could be over 20, depending on how things play out there. But nonetheless, no matter how you look at it, it's an incident that's bellowed around the world, and everyone's talking about it. Every news outlet is covering it or making mention of it. So it's a big deal. Now, thus far, there's some confusion over the two people responsible. Some say they're Indian. One of them was an Indian Muslim. Others say it was a Pakistani Muslim that moved to India and then came to Australia. And the son, because his father and son team going around doing the shooting, the son was born in Australia and is, as I understand it, in his mid-20s, and he somehow became radicalized. For those that have been tracked down that knew one or both of them, they seem to be expressing surprise that these people became radicalized, and their radicalization apparently was unnoticed by the people around them, which seems rather odd. How can someone be sort of go to the point where they be committing, in this case, murdering 20 plus people, and now that takes a certain mindset to go and do that, and yet that radicalization was completely unseen and unnoticed by those around them. That seems a bit of a stretch. Nonetheless, the response by the Australian government and regional governments have been they're sticking tightly to the globalist script. They're not deviating from it, which is what you'd expect for governments that are so completely controlled by the globalists. That's hardly a surprise. So that even though the radical Islam or radical Muslims have been doing a lot of things, whether it's the marches for Palestine or associated activism, they're calling out some very, very severe and very precise and without any ambiguity, some very seriously anti-Semitic type comments, whether it be the river to the sea or death to Israel or death to Jews, all that sort of stuff's going on these recent Palestine marches, which the authorities very strangely have very tamely buckled under. And you can do that, that's okay. Well, what about these white people who want to do march? No fucking Nazis. But the brown people want to do march. Yeah, that's okay. No, that's all right. Can we help you? What can we do to help you? So very different ways that they're dealing with this. And in line with those sentiments, the politicians were gagging and falling over themselves to get to the microphone and say, well, look, the real problem is the far right. It's far right Nazis. It's thugs. It's fucking Hitler. So, complete inversion of reality there. They're sticking tightly to the globalist narrative. I mean, the reason being is mass migration particularly disadvantages white people, and particularly disadvantages straight white males. And therefore, these people are, the straight white males are going to say, hey, this mass migration isn't really working out. It's causing more problems than anything. But if you say that, then you're pushing back and questioning or disagreeing with the globalist project. And if you do that, their instant reflexive comeback is to accuse you of being a Nazi. So that's kind of the two just go together there. Well, I'm not sure. I really think mass migration is a good thing. Nazi, swastika waving, fucking fascist Hitler. That's the instant reflexive response. And the entire political class and much of the media class, by the way, instantly jumps in on that. If you disagree with mass migration, you're Hitler. That's it, pure and simple. But if you a big Islamic march down the main street of Sydney and say, death to Israel and river to the sea, for some reason that's okay. So it's hardly surprising when activists, radicalized Islamic activists start running around with guns and shooting people. In this case, the Hanukkah. Hanukkah celebration on Bondi. But Bondi, by the way, just so just for international viewers, Bondi is the epicenter of the Jewish community in Australia. So not on the beach, but that wider area there is again the epicenter of a lot of synagogues, a lot of Jewish people living there. Every Jewish person I know lives around that part of Sydney. So it's if you were looking for a place, if you're an Islamic militant and radical and you were looking for a place to cause mischief, and that's you would go there. That would be the place, and of course the Hanukkah celebrations, further adding to that congregation and concentration of Jewish people, and the more devout and pious Jews at that would be attending those events, celebrating Hanukkah. Now, so the politicians responding, instead of saying, well, gee, we've really got to look at the mass migration, we've really got to look at Islamic, we've really got to look more closely at Islam and the militant Islam rather, and the steps we're going to take. Anyone associated directly or indirectly with these acts is going to be deported, and we're going to get tough on that, and we're going to crack down. Do the politicians do that? Absolutely not. Why would you do that? That's just too clear, obvious. And so what you do is you say, well, the problem is the far right Nazis. It's the straight white Christians. It's Hitler. It's the Nazis. It's the fascists. So that's what you see. You go, well, you sound all tough too. You got to, we won't tolerate those far right Hitlers. Wait a minute. Stop. It wasn't white people. It was brown people. It was Islamic militants, Pakistan. It was them. No, we can't talk about that. That'll discredit and bring into disrepute mass migration. We have to stay on message. It's the fucking Nazis that did it, and they're the problem. So they're not deviating from the script, which gives an aura of are these people insane? Anyone that's going to run around shooting folks like that is the problem. To try and invent some ideological sort of enemy and phantom is just absurd. But they won't deviate from the globalist script, which to me illustrates at least how completely captured and controlled they are by the globalist cabal. So the crackdown is going to be, it's too easy to get weapons. Well, no, it's not. I haven't actually tried to get a weapon, so I don't know how hard or difficult it is. But apparently this, or it's alleged anyway, in the reporting that I've seen, that these guys had more than 6 guns. And, I saw some footage. One guy seems like a bolt action. How to use it, though? He seemed rather proficient at it. It didn't look like an amateur that was handling the gun for the first time. So as I understand, he was practicing on a shooting range and things like that. But at the same time, this guy was under some sort of surveillance by the intelligence authorities, and I don't know to what extent, but it was on some sort of list, as I understand it, anyway. And so someone who's on a list as being a member of some militant Islamic outfit somehow ends up going to a gun club and owning 6 guns, and no one thinks to query that or question it. I mean, really, for real? And yet some straight white Christian male can make a tweet or make some social media posting, and they're thrown into prison. Oh, excuse me? What sort of insanity is this? So while the authorities are busy saying, well, we any objection to the globalist project, we've got to clamp down on mega hard, big time hard. It's okay for Islamic militants to run around owning guns and shooting folks. So I don't understand. Are they just taking their eye off the ball? Or do they genuinely want the anarchy and the mayhem that's going to come from this, or may come from this? It just seems very strange to me. But by extension, there's been quite a bit of talk recently by the Australian government. This is both state and federal. They've got this false flag thing where they get a bunch of actors or someone, whoever it is, to all dress up in little black uniforms and run up and down waving a swastika and run up and down for the cameras pretending to be Nazis, and then they go, oh, we won't have Nazis here. Oh, we're tough against Nazis. Meanwhile, Islamic militants can go rando shooting Jews. Well, these idiots talk about the supposed neo-Nazis that are running rampant. Now, I'm in my 60s now, and I can safely say I have never met a Nazi. I've never met someone that expressed what you would consider to be Nazi, sympathies or policies, assuming there's even a definition for that. The definition today of a Nazi is anyone that disagrees with mass migration, but I've never met one, so I don't know. It's the same as I've never met a racist, and the dictionary definition of racist being hatred or disdain of others simply because of the color of their skin. I've met plenty of people that have problems with the behaviour of others, but I've never met a racist in my life. And again, I'm in my 60s. You think I'd have met plenty, given that if the Australian government and their propaganda wings are any indication, racists and Nazis are simply everywhere. I'd be tripping over them just trying to walk around the block. But yet I don't know all the people I've known. Maybe I just know well-behaved, cultured folks or something. But I've been out on as a kid anyway. I was out on building sites and all sorts of things, doing bullshit labouring work and so on, and truck depots and warehouses where you would expect, if they were people around like you would expect there, you'd find them. But I've just never met one ever. I've never met a Nazi or a racist in my life. Maybe I'm just too dumb. Maybe they were everywhere, but I never could see it. But now I've never met an anti-Semite in my life. Someone that hates Jews just because they're Jewish and nothing else. I've had those that have pointed out some of the Jewish behaviours that they don't like, but I've never met an actual anti-Semite. And again, I've been around for a while. So the Australian government have made lots of noise. We're going to not let those people form a political party. We're tough. We're big and muscular and hairy chested when it comes to fighting white people and crushing those fucking Nazis. We're just soft little simpy when it comes to the brown people, though. And this has sort of been an pathetic side. But I wanted to talk about the 1950s here, that during the height of the Cold War, this is when the Soviet Union was a heavy hitter on the world stage. They had atomic bombs, they had a huge military and this sort of thing. And there was a lot of hand-wringing at the time. And the only power that was capable of standing up to them was the United States. And so the Cold War was really the Soviet Union and the United States. There were various lesser entities such as Britain and so on that were sort of playing around in the further down the ladder, but and so it was of huge import to everyone in the West that the Chinese communists and the Soviet communists were being put in their place, and the Americans would would make sure that they didn't cause any trouble. But during this time, the Australian government, and you have to sort of get your mindset into the paranoia. There was a Cold War, spies were all over the place, that type of thing. There were spies, communist spies, but whether there was as many as sometimes was suggested, that's another matter. This is the era of McCarthy and that type of thing. And so the Australian government says they were going to outlaw the Communist Party. If any people got together and said, we're going to start a Communist Party, they were going to outlaw it. No Communist Party will be allowed. Now, today they're saying no Fascist Party will be allowed, assuming there is even a Fascist Party in the making, which I doubt. But nonetheless, but one of the good things about democracy, and maybe today there's not that much to be said for it, or less to be said for it than once was the case, but the Australian government had to show that they were not communist. Well, we're not authoritarian. We don't just do things like those communist goons and hoods do. We want to outlaw the Communist Party, but it's the people's decision. We're democratic here. We're not like them. We're democratic here, and it's the vote of the people. The people will decide if a Communist Party is to be outlawed. And so a referendum was held. And, if you look at the sentiments of the time, the government, which was a centre-right government at the time, was pretty confident they'd get it across the line. Who wants communists in charge? We're going to outlaw those fucking bums. And if they fucking step it on, we're going to throw the motherfuckers in prison. We're not going to take no shit from those guys, eh? Those fucking damn communists. What if they take over? They'll be using it. They'll be rounding us up at the point of a gun, and so. There's a whole lot of proper back and forth and going both ways, propaganda but when the vote was finally held, the referendum did not get across the line. The people, the fucking voters decided no. Whether the communists form a government or not, that is a decision for the people to make, not the fucking government, not the fucking public servants, not the fucking globalists, but the people decide. And that was, of course, in the days of democracy. Now, the same thing, of course, should have been done when it came to mass migration. So, look, we think we need to bring in a lot of, illiterate brown and black peasants to create, social mayhem and fuck everything up and destroy everything in sight. So we want to bring all these mass migration, illiterate peasants, low IQ peasants in. But that's the people's decision. We're going to have a referendum. The referendum, it would have been trounced. It would have been obliterated, desolated at the referendum. So I thought, you know what? We just won't have a referendum. We'll just do it. We'll do it administratively and on the quiet in the back room, and we'll just tell the Australian people a whole bunch of lies about people coming in are going to be highly skilled, speaking good English, when in fact 95% of them don't speak much, if any, English. And they're just illiterate, low IQ peasants. But we won't tell the Australian people that. But if they complain, we'll call them Nazis. So the idea is they want to outlaw Nazis or fascists or fascist party. And they'll do optics, like they'll have, again, people dressed in black marching up and down and waving a swastika. They'll do all that, try and create the optics for it. But in my view, it's still a decision for the people. Now, a fascist party, if it's, if the propaganda is to believe, a fascist party wouldn't have a snowball's chance of winning. Nonetheless, it's the people's fucking decision. The people decide. And if some sort of fascist party is established, they're still, even today, there are communist parties. Then the people decide as to whether or not these folks form governments or get even one position and elect even one representative. It doesn't matter. That's still the people's decision. Now, it may not be a decision you and I would or wouldn't agree with, but it's still the people's decision, because you know what? We say that we're a democracy, and if the government can arbitrarily outlaw a political party before it's even existing, by the way, outlaw a political party, then we're not in a democracy anymore, and that needs to be, I think, understood. Coming back to the shooting business on the Bondi Beach, the issue is how much militant Islam can be brought in. I mean, why are people from Pakistan, illiterate peasants from Pakistan being brought into Australia? Why? Well, do they bring something? Do they bring special expertise, knowledge, or capability? But not as far as I can tell. And again, the issue is that out of all the 500,000 people or so that were brought in the last 12 months to Australia, somewhere between 3 and 5% are economically viable. The rest are just a dead weight, dragging down productivity, increasing the welfare costs out of, congesting the cities, and then also government pressuring and heavying all sorts of business that they have to employ minorities and so on and so forth. So we're looking at no benefit whatsoever, and on top of no benefit whatsoever, we also get these shootings. But again, as the government is sticking doggedly to the globalist script, the problem isn't militant Islam, it's those damn fucking fascist Nazi Hitlers that are apparently everywhere. You've been a Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.